Welcome to KBS World Radio. You're now tuned in to Korea24's Korea Book Club, where we explore the world of Korean literature. This is our weekend replay edition, playing back our book segment from Wednesday's show. We hope you enjoy it. I'm your host, Kwon Jang-woo. Joining me in the studio now for that, we have our literary critic, Barry Welsh. Once again, Barry, hello. It's great to see you.
Yes, hello. It's great to be here.
So what do you have in store for us today?
So today I'm very happy to introduce a recently published debut novel from a celebrated historian and short story writer. The novel is called The Melancholy of Untold History, and the writer is Minsoo Kang. And we've reviewed one of his history books before, but this is the first time we're reviewing his fiction. And this debut novel is a beautifully crafted saga that draws inspiration from East Asian mythology, and it blends history, a love story or a couple of love stories, and grief into an epic narrative. It's a novel with a lot of historical depth, as well as sweeping storytelling, and it's all woven together in 4 interlocking stories or myths that explore how we shape and are in turn shaped by the narratives and stories that we create.
Okay, so we should say today that this book is by a Korean author, but he is a professor of European intellectual history at the University of Missouri, St. Louis in the US. Mm-hmm. And so this is not a translated book. This is a book that was written in English. So we are deviating a little from our usual sphere, but we do like to highlight works by Korean writers in English as well.
Yes.
And this sounds like a significant work. Can you tell us more on what it's about?
Sure, yeah. So in Kang's debut novel, we meet a history professor who is dealing with the loss of his wife. We're also introduced to his young protege who is going through her own search for meaning in her life. And then we're also introduced to a quartet of 4 very amusing and witty mountain gods who seem to be enjoying their time as gods on the mountain, and they seem to have all of the luxuries at their feet until they don't. Something happens that removes their sort of privileged position from them. Mm-hmm. And then the professor and his young sort of former student, they have to navigate this sort of grief that they're experiencing, and they're also dealing with storytelling, the power of storytelling in very specific ways, and they sort of come across the myth of these gods, these 4 mountain gods, and these gods, or the myths surrounding these gods, were possibly created by a mysterious storyteller who may or may not have had his own agenda. So it's quite a complicated, intricate book. Altogether, it spans about 3,000 years from multiple perspectives. And what Kang is doing in this novel is he's sort of challenging the boundaries between fact and fiction, and he's really trying to blend what myth is with reality, and he's doing this in a way that's quite complex but at the same time very engaging. And I thought that he's succeeded, and he's crafted a novel that's a very rich exploration of this sort of process of myth making and construction and how we understand and experience history, but is also a very human story of love and grief and just the general search for meaning in life. And it's mind expanding journey through time and memory that I think will leave many readers thinking long after they finish it.
Wow, that is sounds like quite an epic tale. Mm-hmm. And you've mentioned it several times. The central theme seems to be storytelling, perhaps the power of storytelling. Mm-hmm. How does the story then explore this and the relationship between history, myth, and narratives?
Mm-hmm, right. So, Kang is, like you said, he's a historian. He's also a fiction writer. He's written several short stories before this novel. And he obviously has a very strong fascination or interest in this sort of relationship between myth and history and storytelling and how people experience these things. But this isn't a dry academic novel. It is very engaging. It's a very colourful, vibrant, often slightly rude and ambitious epic that spans, like I said, several thousand years in the history of an area that's referred to as the realm of the Grand Circle. And this is a place where we have these sort of ancient dynasties that resemble or echo the traditions of East Asia.
Right.
And the story begins with a storyteller, this once famous storyteller, and he's summoned by the emperor to tell tales. And he's told that he has to tell these tales, but they have to be completely original and never repeated. If he repeats himself, then he'll be severely punished. And it's through these storytellers that the storyteller makes for the emperor that we encounter these gods that are sort of fighting with each other and squabbling over things. We meet a very unusual dragon and various other things like fire bears and sky babies and all sorts of things.
Right, okay.
And it's these elements that form perhaps the liveliest part of the story. They're very humorous, and there's a lot of sort of wit and playfulness in those sections.
Right.
And then there's other elements which are more about the sort of complex history of this realm's different dynasties, and we see those through the eyes of this sort of academic, this contemporary historian who's experiencing this grief. And this historian character, he is sort of investigating how this region or nation's history was possibly fabricated by a previous ruler, and this has had some unintended consequences. And so across the novel, we explore these different things and follow these different stories and strands. And there's also some recurring and striking imagery, such as this sort of a dragon and this sky baby on this sort of purple-red cloud going around throwing lightning and things. But all these different narratives are linked together. And the themes, like you mentioned, that linking these things is it's myth, it's history, and it's the power of stories.
So there are stories within stories, layers upon layers,
Yes.
it seems, of this fascinating world that Kang has created. Another fascinating aspect about this book is that the story spans 3,000 years, as you said, and has multiple voices. That sounds like it could be quite overwhelming, though, Barry. How does Kang handle this expansive timeline, and what impact does it have on the reader's experience?
Right, so it does cover a lot, but it's actually quite a short novel that you could read this quite quickly. So in that sense, it's not a challenging, 1,000-page epic to get through.
Well, I understand it's less than 300 pages.
Yeah, something like that. Yes, but Kang does a very good job of squeezing all of these things, so many different things into the story. So it's a very rich tapestry of stories and connected narratives that crosses generations, but this is done very engaged, and he does this in a way that's very engaging. But it does shift between these sort of different eras and different perspectives, and he's really trying to capture the evolution of this sort of region and this dynasty that is at the same time sort of grand and mythological, but as well has sort of intimate elements as well. But the novel structure does have these sort of several storylines, but that allows you to see how history and myth and personal stories overlap and influence each other.
Once again, it's called The Melancholy of Untold History by Minsoo Kang, and that was our pick for this week's Korea Book Club. Barry, thank you for that recommendation, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Okay, take care.
And that's all for this week's Korea Book Club. You can check out more of the works we discussed on our website at world.kbs.co.kr. Join us again next week.